relationships that really have an unconscious or subconscious motivation to bring us to more wholeness by shining the light of awareness into the part of ourselves that are still hidden in the shadow. So when we can transcend that, it becomes the golden shadow, which are the lessons that we learn through our deepest suffering. The one for me, but the one that is coming with me to burn the ashes of my trauma so we can rise like Phoenix.
We'll make it out and fall in love tonight.
There's a thing that I think of oftentimes when it comes to people that are in the field of helping other people in any capacity, really, right? I think a lot of times that comes from the impetus of experiences that they've had over the course of their life, the things that they've gone through and experienced, and how that has both shaped and molded them. But I always think that, because I'm always thinking about it from the lens of my own experience, where there's always a part of me that's trying to understand myself even more.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering if you can relate to that first and foremost, but then I just want to hear a little bit about how you've gotten to this place in your life. Yeah, I guess we can just start there. Sometimes I layer on too many questions and then we get lost.
Yeah, no, it's good. I love question. I love asking question. I love answering questions. So yeah, there's many avenue we could go with that. I would say that if we go back really far into the past, I'm doing this work because, and it's a bit gloom to start with that, but I always call that chapter the despair of being me, because of what I've experienced in my childhood, the trauma, the bullying. I was called very different. I was called very weak. I felt deeply not wanted by the world. And there were something that happened was my home was not safe. School was not safe. So it became not safe to be me. And so that's really the despair, right? That's what I am. I was constantly asking myself, what am I behind the pain, behind the loneliness, behind the confusion? Because I couldn't understand why I was experiencing that. And then it becomes so familiar. So I will keep attracting things to reveal my internal home. And we probably have a lot of time to talk about that, which is kind of the core of my work. It's like looking at how the wounded ego have absorbed what it believes is love or what most familiar in our childhood, and then keep attracting people and circumstances to start to want to recreate what we've created in childhood or what we were exposed in childhood. So it was a lot of trauma, a lot of despair. I remember between 21 to 27, I couldn't do much. I was in depression, like navigating through depression, anxiety, not having any purpose, not being able to understand my values or why I was in this world, why I was there for. So I think I had, when I moved from Paris to Australia, I had my first dark night of the soul. So for those who are listening, dark night of the soul is a moment in time where your soul is trying to emerge, but the ego is so strong that it creates resistance and tension in the body and in the psyche. And we go through excruciating pain because the ego, there is a battle between the ego and the soul in that moment. The ego is like, I want to keep perpetuating what I know. The soul is like, you are not here for that. And I need you to start to break free from your constraints, whether it's like stored in the body or in our subconscious mind. So like the main thing in this is that I became, because there is two ways we can become, right? We can either go through a phase when we become what we resent the most, or we can go on the total opposite way. So let's say someone was abused with controls, they will become the pleaser because it's the opposite. Or some people will experience, like me with my father, a lot of anger issue from me and a lot of verbal abuse. So I will become also that in my relationship. The whole game of this healing is to understand how we have become like our parents to ourselves and others, how we have created our false self, or what people call the conditioned self, from this. And then we can start to move away from that, which is what the soul wants, which is the emergence of the authentic self. But we can only do that when we go through the removal of what we think we are that we are not, which is again all the layers of inauthentic suppression. So I was full of that. Like I thought I was the pleaser, the fixer, the savior, and at the same time the angry man, the desperate person. But all of that were just personalities and personas that my ego had created in order to try to survive what he forgot he created in the first place. So I'm sure like during our conversations, there's probably more things that are going to come out. But in terms of my own personal experience, there were really a turning point when the biggest shift, that occurred was after the dissolution of my first marriage, because not only it had to reveal all the blind spots I couldn't see, but it also helped me understand how far someone can come under the manipulation of their own ego. And so to that extent, a wounded ego is willing to go and bring people to their side to prove them right and to prove the other person wrong. But what I understand is that to the degree I'd attracted someone that was manipulative, I was trapped under my own manipulation. And this is one of the biggest emotional negative attachment to people is denial. So we are not aware that we are not aware. So unconscious denial, and then conscious denial, it's like I'm aware, but I don't want to change. So we all have been through that. So that was probably quite a bit of what I've experienced. Yeah. So does that answer your question?
Yes. And it gives us so much to talk about, Quentin, because there's so much in all of the different things that you just got done sharing that I'm really excited to explore. I have a follow-up question, though. I'm curious, so many of these topics and ideas that you're talking about, like the dark night of the soul, really being able to look at your childhood and how you're replaying some of those experiences and how you were parented and how that's, you know, playing out in your relationships. Mm-hmm. All of these things, I think, take a level of not just deeper understanding of yourself, but also human dynamics and things like that. But I also think that there's just a component to it where you're exploring what it means to be human to some extent. And so I'm curious, over the course of your life, like childhood, you know, teenage years, what were some of the things that influenced your curiosity in this space?
Yeah, so for me, that was always relationships. So what I mean by that is it's interesting. So we might go a bit into the spiritual world here. And I know that some people don't believe in that, but I really believe in that. I believe that
it's our jam, Quentin.
Yeah.
It's totally our jam. So we can go as deep down that rabbit hole as you want to go.
Great. So what I've experienced and listening to a lot of people, and I love to listen to people that talk about the same thing, but in different field, right? So science, relationship coach, spiritual, even people that can channel things that are invisible. So Joe Dispenza talked a little bit about that. What I found out is that before incarnating, we are going to choose themes in this lifetime. So my theme in this life is to understand relationship at the deepest level and family. So from this, right, I was like, why do all my issue are always around relationship? Because this is the theme I've chosen. So in order to understand the bliss of the relationship, I have to understand the hell of relationship. Because that we like it or not, we live in a world of duality. And I know a lot of people say like, no, the world is not dual, but we can see it everywhere, even on the subconscious level. Our subconscious prisons are always evolving two arms. So what I mean by the theme is relationship will always come back for me, and it will always reveal everything that was still limited by, but I wouldn't understand back then. So this is why for me, I was, for example, the person that will get entangled and attached very quickly, because I will believe that I finally met the one. And so, you know, like people that consciously feel that, oh, I've met my twin flame or my soulmate, and finally they are the answer to all the sufferings and the void that I have within. but it's deeper than that. So what happened is when we have these emotional signature recognition, which mean like we see someone, we think it's the one, and we're like, oh, I have the impression I've met you before. Like it's not that you have met them before, but you have met their emotional signature. And oftentimes this is going to be the emotional signature from the person you have the most unfinished businesses with. So a lot of couple, a lot of people, it's like they have an unfinished business with their father or their mother. For people that have chose relationship as a theme, we have we have unfinished this business with everyone. Like because everyone was like kind of abusive unconsciously or consciously. And then you have to deal with all that emotional charge and trauma and wounds and subconscious prison that you have accumulated over time. So for the people that are listening to us, if you have a strong recognition like this, oftentimes, okay, consciously we are going to say, oh, finally I've met the one. Unconsciously, your wounded inner child is saying, oh, they are the one that can finally alleviate the lack and the fear I'm trapped in. They are the one that can replace the parents I wish I had or I wish I didn't have. Deeper than that, the subconscious, which is the ego, the ego is really wanted to replay what's familiar. It's not the enemy, but it's not an ally either. It's just like, I'm on a repeat. So we can see it as a broken record. When we heal, it's become a golden record. But so subconsciously, the wounded ego is going to say, oh, they are the one I can reinforce all of what I believe is love. And oftentimes, the ego will believe love is everything that we have experienced as a child. So if abandonment, rejection, or betrayal, or humiliation, or even deprivation, which is people don't really understand this one because it's not rarer, but we talk less than abandonment or rejection, for example. So the intense attraction we have with someone is oftentimes how we are behaving towards ourselves. So if I have an abandonment wound, I'm going to bring in someone who leave me to reveal how I leave myself in a relationship. And how do I leave myself behind in a relationship? By leaving my needs behind. So that would be the abandonment wound playing out. So that's why we will attract people that leave us. So consciously, unconsciously, subconsciously, and then the soul is attracting these people so we can dissolve the wounds. And we dissolve the wounds through revealing the machinery of our ego that's in the way of us becoming really authentic. So it's interesting because I often see people talking about, I keep attracting abuser. That's not my responsibility, that them. And on some level, yes, consciously, it's not your responsibility, but there is a magnet in you that attract that. And oftentimes we will attract people who abuse us to the degree we have become subservient. So you will oftentimes, to the degree you have become a people pleaser, you will bring in someone who will a people taker. It's like, we can keep going onto social media and blaming my ex was a narcissist or this and that, or we can start to dissolve what is within us that keep attracting these people, which are actually the biggest gift. And I know people are going to be a bit weird when they hear that. Like, I actually think that abuser or even narcissists, like, I mean, true narcissists, NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, they are probably, the most abusive people, but they are the biggest gift as well, because you will attract them into your life so you can break free from and shatter all the aspects of yourself that are not you. But now we go into a really deep conversation. But so I hope that answer your question. Sometimes I have a tendency to go a bit everywhere with that. But this is why many relationships for me didn't work, because I wanted other people to change for me. My ego wanted them to remain the same. It wanted me to remain the same so I could keep replaying the chaos and the conflict that I've witnessed and experienced as a child. So, and it's interesting because when I understand that my partners in the past were not the source of my pain, but just the revealer of the pain that is already there, then it starts to really shift. Because then even if a person is abusive, the partner is not the enemy. It's like they are revealing how you've become your own abuser to your own victim. But that doesn't mean we should stay with someone like that. They are just brought into your awareness, so you can probably set a boundary with yourself first and say, I'm not going to let my ego rule that anymore. and then eventually leave the person that is abusive, because we need to change. As we change our internal world, the external world is going to change as well. But if you do your own healing, but you remain in a relationship that is abusive, you keep abusing yourself. So then it also becomes your responsibility. There's a lot there, but yeah.
Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by Woolly. We absolutely love Woolly, and they're a longtime sponsor of this podcast. We're currently 100% decked out in all Woolly right now, and truthfully, it's how we walk around most days.
Woolly is made from 100% merino wool, which is known for its natural softness, which it is so soft, and that's really important. As while we're being healthier, I don't want it to feel scratchy or itchy. They're easy to care for, machine washable, because out of all the places that I'm spending my time, I don't want it to be spent on laundry.
Woolly has a wide variety of men and women's clothing, everything from socks, underwear, tops, bottoms, pants, leggings. What else, babe?
Did you say underwear and nice hoodies?
Another thing that I really love about Woolly is if it gets wet, you actually stay dry. All their clothes are sustainable and eco-friendly.
And because they're 100% merino wool, they're natural moisture wicking, which means they're not sticking to you and feeling gross.
Listeners of the podcast get an exclusive discount of 15% off of everything at Woolly. Head to the link in our description.
And be sure to enter the code Steph and Craig at checkout to get that 15% off.
So go get yourself some socks. Go get yourself some underwear. Again, that code is Steph and Craig. Save 15%.
There's so much there, but I want you to circle back to deprivation and talk about that a little bit more. You said that one isn't very talked about, and I want to hear your spin on it or your take on it. If you could explain what exactly that is. I first was thinking you were talking about neglect, and you mentioned that it's not that. So
yeah. So thank you for asking. It's a really good question, because deprivation is oftentimes will be created when, there were a wound of neglect, there was a wound of lack. So everything that we were deprived as a child, we are going to deprive ourselves of that on some level without realizing it. So for some people, they were deprived of happiness and joy. And then they are more going to be attached to the opposite, which is sadness and loneliness. So deprivation is, let me just get it straight, so I'm sure I can answer the question accurately. When we have an addiction to deprivation, you are more likely to not get what you need in a relationship, and then your ego is going to select someone with whom you can never get your need met because it's never there to be given in the first place. So deprivation is oftentimes we're going to go into a relationship, we're going to get attached, we're going to start to, the hard part, people get into a trauma-bond relationship, but it's rarer. We go into a codependent relationship, we leave our independent needs behind because we are so focused on not losing the person outside that we're going to start to people please them, we're going to start to meet their needs. And oftentimes deprivation, it's we forgot what truly matters to us. So we deprive ourselves of our values. We deprive ourselves of of what matters for us the most, but it starts with being deprived or needs met as a child and being dismissed and denied. So oftentimes our authentic self is going to be dismissed and denied as a child, because how do we express our needs as a child? Oftentimes through tantrum and outburst. And we don't receive care and compassion and love, we are going to receive some form of blame or neglect. And then we're going to start to understand that these needs cannot be met, we repress them, and that's from deprivation. So if we have a parent that neglect, deprive, and dismiss us, then we have no choice than to attract a partner that's going to deprive, dismiss, and deny what we want, because it's a reflection of how we are acting with ourselves in a relationship. So I will enter a relationship putting my needs at the bottom of my list. Then I attract someone that put my needs at the bottom of their list. When I start to dissolve deprivation and I place my needs first, but also my value, then I can start to attract people that are also going to place my needs at the top of their list. There is always a mirror somewhere. But so deprivation oftentimes manifest under the form of I'm going to select someone who is emotionally unavailable, perfect place to not having my needs met. Or I'm going to select someone who is available, but then I deprive them of their needs. Or I'm going to leave my independent needs behind and I'm going to focus on the other person, like I just explained. And so in order to find where we deprive ourselves, we ask ourselves, where does the deprivation and the feeling of being defeated come from? Because oftentimes when we are deprived, we're going to go the opposite and we become needy. So needy, how do we ask for our needs to be met when we are needy? It's through protesting behavior. Protesting behavior say, prove to me that you love me by doing this, and that. But underneath, because you're protesting, you're pushing someone away. So you are not really trying to prove that they love you. You're trying to prove that you are not lovable. Because eventually someone will leave you, and that will reconfirm how your parents have neglected you and deprived you. So in order to find out where you have deprivation and you ask yourself, who deprived you? How am I depriving myself of my own needs in life? So where I'm always putting myself last, for example. Where in life do I don't get my need met? Where do I entertain relationship where it's one-sided? So where I do way more for the other person, but I don't receive the same level, because you are likely to do that from a people-pleasing place, not from a really kind place. And where do I feel I'm depriving myself for connection and experience? So my big thing was I will deprive myself of connection. So when I will enter a relationship, I wouldn't talk to my family, to my friends. I will be all in my relationship, and that's it. But so depriving myself of connection, we go the opposite way. So you are addicted to separation. So I will separate myself from other people. And then in a relationship, how would I create separation? Through conflict. My ego will want to recreate conflict constantly. So then I will deprive myself of a healthy relationship or of peace, because peace was really absent in my childhood with my parents. So that was my deprivation. So some people can deprive themselves of peace. Some people it's safety. Some people it's having their needs met. Some people it's joy and happiness. Had a bit of everything of that. So then we need to look at deprivation into the term of, I need to deprive myself of my own deprivation. So I need to start in a way depriving myself of my own deprivation. It's recognizing, where do I deprive myself? And then oftentimes I need to go the opposite to nourish myself and nurture myself. Does that answer your question?
Very well. Thank you. It's given me there's some layers there.
Yeah.
There's some
a lot of
layers there
layers,
that
yeah.
just got peeled back. And I'm like, okay. I like I need to start depriving myself of deprivation. Where am I depriving
Yeah.
myself and doing the opposite of that, and is a nurturing. So I'm going to get really curious on that space. That definitely peeled some layers back that I thought were already peeled back, but they
Yeah.
weren't. There was definitely some more to look at there.
What I like, Quentin, is as you were talking, it's because you mentioned earlier the duality of everything and the duality of this existence and everything like that, where it's always got an opposite part to it. So it's like identifying the thing that you're doing and then looking for its correlation on the other side of the spectrum and how that kind of plays out across. I get that process mixed up oftentimes, where I think I've got it figured out, but truthfully, I was still just on the same side of the spectrum rather than seeing it for like the clear opposite in the mirror part of it. But you also mentioned earlier, you brought up twin flames, and I wanted to just get, like, what do you feel like people get wrong about that experience, about the twin flame thing or about soulmates? How do you think people get it wrong when they're thinking about it or experiencing it?
Yeah, it's a great question, because oftentimes people still believe that relationships are about love and satisfaction. And we need to remove that. So you are the essence of the love that you feel. Like, no one is opening your body and pouring a jar of love inside. It's self-generated. But for some reason, because of the mechanism of the ego, the two mechanisms of the ego is denial and projection. So the mechanism of projection is going to be like, I felt so disconnected from my own sense of love as a child because I was not nurtured the right way. Then I'm going to think that love is to be found outside of us or outside of me, right? So I'm going to get attached to what people tell me, like when you find your twin flame and when you find your soulmate, everything will fall into place. I will finally find what is missing within me. But this is why it's wrong, because oftentimes people who get in a what they label a twin flame relationship is more likely to be a codependent relationship. So relationships, they are for growth, healing, and expansion. So I like to look at twin flame not as the one for me, but the one that is coming with me to burn the ashes of my trauma so we can rise like phoenix. I prefer to look it like that. So it dissolves a bit the aspect of all the sugar coating around twin flame, because if we really study twin flames, there is stages in the twin flame journey, and there is a stage where you either make it up or you break it up. So I like to look at this like relationship are for growth, healing, and expansion, because relationships, they really have an unconscious or subconscious motivation to bring us to more wholeness by shining the light of awareness into the part of ourselves that are still hidden in the shadow. So when we can transcend that, it becomes the golden shadow, which are the lessons that we learn through our deepest suffering we can then help others with. So this is why when we think we have met our twin flame, again, what I was saying at the beginning of the podcast is it's an emotional signature recognition. And it gets so passionate and sexually intense because in a sexual tension, there is also fear, because fear is excitement in the body, excitement is arousal is a turn on. So we are like, oh, I'm very drawn, and that chemistry is really high, but then we miss the point, because we need at least the 3C for a relationship to start working well, which is chemistry, connection, and compatibility. So it's interesting because people talk about right and wrong relationship, right? I don't consider any wrong relationship. I always say like everybody or everyone you attract is always right in the moment for you to have things that are revealed within you so you can deal with it and then attract the person that is the right one for you in terms of right to build a relationship that lasts. But everyone is right on some level. Like even a couple of ex-partners that were really, really abusive, and I'm talking someone that has really NPD, and another one that has what we call malignant bipolar. And I'm not, I don't want to accuse anyone with bipolar. I know it's very hard, but when it's malignant bipolar, it becomes very insidious, and it's very hard to build a relationship with someone like this. But so even in that, I was able to find the gift, and I know they were right for me in that moment, because from the lesson I got from them, I was able to help so many people. But it took me 2 years to heal from just one of these relationships. My nervous system was completely obliterated. Like I had CPTSD constantly. So, but when you choose this theme and you're on purpose with that, you have to experience hell to understand heaven. So what I want really people to understand is that twin flame and that soulmate thing. If you live in a fantasy, most people want a relationship that will be an escape of the realities they want to run away from. And we are only going to chase something externally from the belief we are missing something internally. So this is why most people still live in a state of what I call external compensation instead of being a journey of internal evolution. The dark night of the soul mark the moment. If you have the right manual and if you meet the right people that can help you with, it marks the end of what we try to externally compensate, and we go inside and we start to evolve internally. Because otherwise, relationships are amazing because you can go two ways. You either recreate your past, and we are going to recreate our past through suppression, repression, aggression, overexpression, or escape. Or we are going to be able to create something different. But this is going to ask you to meet with the part of you that are the most resistant and being able to start to dissolve that. So there is part of you that we need to dissolve. There is part of you that needs to be reintegrated. This is why I always look at, all the world at the moment, it's around inner child work. And the thing is with inner child work, it's interesting because
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Heritage Still. When we got married, we combined all of our pans together.
All of our really old, scratched up, crappy nonstick pans.
And we used those for years. Right up until the point where we learned that, turns out, those were probably killing us or giving us all cancer. So we ditched those pans and we went with titanium stainless steel pans from Heritage Still.
These pans can be used on any cooktop. They're oven safe and they're easy to clean.
Heritage Still is located right here in Tennessee. So you're getting American-made, fine, premium cookware for less. On top of that, you get a lifetime warranty.
And listeners of the podcast can save 10% over at Heritage Still.
Their website is heritagestill.us/Steph and Craig. Again, that's
.us/.
Steph and Craig. Save 10% at Heritage Still.
if you go into inner child work with an understanding the machinery of your ego, it's like giving a hug to your inner child, but they are still in a prison. So your inner child is behind the bar and you come and sometimes you hug them and you reassure them, but you are not dissolving the machinery and the prison that is trapping you really. It's also like when we look at the world is all about feeling and emotions at the moment. It's all about feel your feelings, acknowledge your emotion, validate your partner emotions and feelings, all of that. It is important, but if we look at emotion and feelings, they are at the end of the chain, right? So if we reverse engineer our way, we have talk therapy that focus on behavior. So we have outcome in life. If we look at the whole chain of a pattern, we have an outcome in life. Before that, we have behavior. Behavior are generated from feeling and emotion, which is where the world is focused at the moment. Then feeling and emotion are generated from thoughts. Thoughts come from belief. And then in the traditional approach, belief comes from wounds, which come from trauma, conditioning, and religious background. We have inherited from our parents. But there is a big world that I don't see a lot of people talking about between root cause and limiting belief. And that whole world is the world of the subconscious prison, shadow needs, and emotional negative attachment, which is really the core of my work, which is what I look at people. And that's why I realize why so much people do so much healing, but they still remain stuck or trapped, because there is that machinery and that fortress of the subconscious behind that needs to collapse. So then all the other work like nervous system regulation, wounded inner child work then can work. Because it's like you can keep regulating your nervous system. If you still have prison that dysregulate your nervous system, you are not really going anywhere. You will keep trying to regulate when you need to upgrade the software, if I can say it like that. And for people to understand a prison or a program is just a construct based on language that lives within our psyche and control all aspects of our reality. And it will keep manifesting what we don't want until the program resolves itself. So my wounds was, for example, abandonment wound. The program or the prison that is attached to an abandonment wound is I'm not wanted. So I'm not wanted will push me to do two things in a relationship. Either people please to prove that someone needs is more important than me, or to protest. And when I protest, I keep pushing people away. Eventually they break up with me. So that will prove that I'm not wanted. So that's how we become oftentimes the own perpetrator of our own demise. The moment we can start to look at the prison and like, okay, I'm not wanted, it's because on some level there is part of me that I don't want. And then I'm asking someone else to alleviate the pain that I don't want to look at. So these prisons are really like fortresses infused in our subconscious, and they are all preventing the true self from emerging. Because the ego believes that it needs to protect the authentic self with all these fortresses, because our authentic self was hurt, punished, dismissed, denied, rejected, abandoned as a child. So on some level, it's trying to protect the authentic self from hurt, but it doesn't realize it's hurting itself by doing it. That's the paradox and the madness of that game. So there were a lot there again. I think I went a bit into different phase, but to come back to the twin flame, if we can look at twin flame as someone that is willing to continue doing the work with you and know that there is some shits that are going to be revealed in our relationship. And if we can bring compassion, not enabling or dismissing abuse, but at the same time, it's making the difference oftentimes between being unsafe and feeling unsafe. Feeling unsafe, oftentimes it's like we look at, it can be two things. I feel unsafe because someone's behavior is really attacking me, so that being unsafe, there is a threat around me. Feeling unsafe, oftentimes it's like my partner is doing something that is not a threat, but my ego takes that as a threat. So I give you an example. For example, a big wound for me was betrayal. I will get massive wave of anxiety when my partner say, I'm just going out in 2 days with my friend. My story will be like, oh, she's going out, she's going to drink. If she drinks, she's going to get drunk. If she get drunk, she's going to betray me. She's going to cheat on me. That was my story. And so those wave of thing, I will feel unsafe, but not because she was doing anything wrong, because my body was reacting. And oftentimes people don't make that difference between, is my partner really unsafe to be with? Or do I feel unsafe because they have behavior that triggers something in me that I need to look at? Oftentimes there's a bit of both, because it's never one or the other. Like, of course, someone who is very avoidant is going to trigger massively an anxious person, and vice versa. So for me, it's like the moment we can look at people and partners that are coming, as long as someone is willing to work with us and we have compatibility, connection, and chemistry, then we can really evolve with someone.
Oh my goodness. Quentin, you are highlighting so many different things that are not just things that we can relate to, stuff that we talk about on the podcast all the time, but truthfully things that we're navigating in our life right now, like present day moment, things that we're going through right now. Before I go off on whatever tangent I'm about to go off on, babe, I want to double check and see if there's anything that we want to bring up.
No, I'm good. I'm just taking it in right now and echoing that. Like, there's the uncanny synchronicity of what you're bringing up and what is going on right now is just, I'm really enjoying the echo and the way that you share it. You explain it so, it's like you can put words to thoughts and feelings that maybe haven't been able to be identified. So the way that you're going through and really describing it and elaborating on it is so resonating. Like, that's what I'm feeling. I didn't know how to say it, or I didn't know what that emotion was. And so I'm loving this, and I'm excited for your tangent. Let's go.
We met, we've been together about 13 years, and we're coming up on our 10-year anniversary. So we're celebrating our 10-year wedding anniversary in just over a month. And when we first met, we definitely had that super intense twin flame journey experience at the beginning of our relationship. And you mentioned earlier phases of that process, and at some point coming up to that spot where you either break up or you don't, right? And that very much was what we went through, and it involved us really having to just peel back all of these layers of, truthfully, all this stuff that you're talking about, going into inner child work, really looking at what was underneath all these different aspects of all the trauma bonding and all the codependency and all the people pleasing that was kind of up here on the surface, that was just repeating cycles and patterns from our childhood. But I was wondering if you would be willing to go into some of the other, because all of this stuff that you're talking about, I think, is so profoundly spot on in regards to what relationships are really about. I like that you brought up that this is what relationships are really for and what they're really about, right? To heal and to evolve and grow together in that sense. But I know that some people are still stuck in a lot of the, and I don't want to say surface like it's less than, I mean, it's just a journey, it's just an experience. But for the people that are out there that might be having a harder time grasping some of these concepts that are a little bit deeper into the space of relationship work and inner work for the person or for the individual, how can we help bridge the gap from where you might still be experiencing some of these, well, they told me this, or, you're still caught up in the arguments about, day-to-day life things and still thinking that it's the other person's fault that you're not happy. And if they would just hurry up and get their shit together, then our life would be better. And all these kind of surface level issues that people struggle with and face and can stay stuck in those cycles and patterns for years and years and years, just projecting onto each other. How can we help people go from that phase to dropping down into some of this deeper work where things can actually start to shift and change?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And I think it's $1 million question because there's so many avenues we can go to that. But I think that if I excuse my French with this, but it's like when people get tired of their own shit and they start to look at themselves, right? Oftentimes when we see in the world is women are more likely to do that work way faster than men, because men I've realized that a man ego or even a man nervous system is way more into the resistance of doing the work. Why when oftentimes when most of my clients, I would say 80% of my clients are women that are trying to have their men wanting to do this work. And yeah, it's oftentimes it's a bit different from everyone. Like some people can read a book and suddenly they're like, oh my God, like I've been talking about the dishwasher, but it has nothing to do with the dishwasher. Or like oftentimes I take the example of a dishwasher because that was that from one of my clients. They were constantly arguing around the dishwasher, but the deep layers of that is what she was saying is like, when you don't help me with the chores, I feel that I don't matter. And I don't matter is a big construct for people. It's one of the prison that I often open for people. And that's related again to deprivation. Because if I feel that I didn't matter as a child, I'm going to deprive myself of what matters most. I think after like once people can start to identify and take responsibility again, because the biggest thing to break free from first and foremost is the denial. That's a massive emotional negative attachment to denial, unconscious denial, because we deny our responsibility. And even when we do the work, we can go unconscious and then we start to argue. And then we realize, oh, no, I've just done that. And that's why my partner is responding like that. It asks for a lot of awareness and emotional resilience as well. But I would say that the big core of my work and what I help people really with, besides the prison and all that, and to understand how they have become like their parents, but not towards the person, towards themselves. So that is going to be very important, because once people can see that they were not really driving their life consciously, their ego was driving them, because that ego is made out of parts that have no choice but to become like their parents. Because we model our environment and then we're going to mirror it when we are a child. So modeling is something that you were taught or that you have absorbed from witnessing something. So let's say, like, for example, my father, very angry, but very avoidant. So I modeled that. So I developed a disorganized attachment because my mom was very anxious and my dad was very avoidant and angry. So then my psyche split in two, and then I had these two. So oftentimes that's how his disorganized attachment style is created, and oftentimes is taken with bipolar personality. And you will see I had a client that was like, I don't understand, my child has bipolar. I'm like, did someone diagnose them? I'm like, no, I've read things on the internet. I'm like, tell me what's going on in your life. Oh, we just divorced and my husband is like this and I'm like that. I was like, don't go further than that. He's not bipolar. He just stuck between two worlds and he doesn't know which way to go. And so because the external world would be chaotic, peaceful between the two parents, but a lot of separation, he will become chaotic and peaceful sometime, but overly chaotic and then overly shutting down, because he was just modeling what he could see and then mirror it. So again, modeling is something that you were taught or you have absorbed, and then you mirror it later on, which is you displaying the same thing that was done to you or in front of you, or you will bring in someone who will have the same behavior than the one you have towards yourself. So oftentimes, this is why, for example, I had a disorganized attachment style. I will attract someone who is very dismissive, avoidant, but also had like the worst case of ADHD possible. And again, I don't dismiss or deny or blame anyone who have ADHD. I know how hard this is to engage with, but it's the level of dysregulation that come from these patterns that then we recognize each other. So disorganized attachment style, I will attract dismissive, avoidant, and malignant bipolar people. Perfect to recreate the chaos that I experienced as a child and the chaos that I experienced as a child.
We have a new podcast sponsor, and it's one that I'm really excited about. It's Nutrotonic, and they make authentic Himalayan Shilajit. I've been aware of Shilajit for several years, but hesitant to try any of them because there's a lot of fake ones on the market. But when Nutrotonic reached out and wanted to partner with us, I thought I'd give it an honest try. Well, I've been using it for several months now, and I have to say I love it. Nutrotonic is the only brand to sell rare red Shilajit, which is the most healing, it's high in fulvic acid, and it's the most effective type of Shilajit on the market for boosting testosterone, blood circulation, and overall balance of your hormones, all of which reduce common intimacy issues like ED, low libido, and can even help with menopause symptoms. The other cool thing about Nutrotonic is their Shilajit comes in a couple of different options for you. I went with the resin, which I'm a huge fan of. They've also got drops and gummies. Right now, listeners of the podcast can save 15% on anything at their website. Head to the link in our description and be sure to use promo code Steph Craig to get that 15% off. Nutrotonic, authentic, rare, red Himalayan Shilajit. Give it a shot. You're going to love it.
A more precise example for this, that people can start to recognize what they do. Let's take criticism, for example. And I'm going to try to make it really simple. You will criticize yourself the way your parents criticized you. And then you bring in a partner who criticizes you the way you criticize yourself. If you have a big tendency to beat yourself up again and again in your mind, you have no choice but to attract circumstances to beat yourself up more, like perceived failures or mistake, or people blaming you because the program from criticism is trying to reconfirm itself. The program will be, I've done something wrong. So oftentimes we can feel easily criticized in a relationship, or we can explode easily because we think that when a partner just do a request, we are being criticized, because we are probably were in a childhood environment where our parents will not come and say, hey, don't do this, or can you clean your room? You're like, go to your room, or if you clean your room and then you're criticized because it was not good enough, then you start to talk to yourself the way your parents talk to you. So really, to answer your question, how can people bridge the gap between understanding the surface level and go into deep healing? It's starting to look at this behavior and see like, oh, okay, I really have become my mother or my father here. And then therefore, part of my responsibility here is like, I'm recreating what I've experienced as a child. Of course, there is way more to it. So that's why oftentimes what I love to do in my session is to link the whole pattern. So we look at everything that I've explained at some point in that podcast. What happened is like the game Tetris. So there is block that come and then it starts to dissolve. And of course, after we need strategy on a behavior level to create what I call a different karmic momentum. So you have karmic momentum created from subconscious limitation that keep pushing you to sabotage things in your life or attract people you don't want. And then you have healthy karmic momentum where you realize, okay, I was doing this from that place because of that prison. Now that prison is brought to my awareness. So now I really have a choice. The prison is not creating so much resistance that prevent me to do differently. Now I can do differently because there is, when I open the prison, there is an emotional discharge from the body, like the prison open, and oftentimes the emotion that were stored start to come out. When that is done, there is way less resistance of the ego, because the ego kind of need to see itself to become part of the self. So this is what we call parts, right? Because we need to reintegrate that. We cannot reintegrate that if there is an emotional charge in the body that is stored. So long answer again for you, but that's how we can start to really move from also understanding that if there are conflict, and oftentimes people, or on average couples, have 5 or 6 main topics they will always argue about. And I think the Goffman Institute said that something like 60% of conflict can never be solved. So it can only be managed. And over time, we don't deny or we don't accept abuse, but we start to work better together. But so we can really ask ourselves, like, in what way am I co-creating the conflict in my relationship? In what way am I the co-creator of everything that I don't like in my life? But this is why I also do this job, because oftentimes people come to me where they have tried a lot of things and they are still oblivious and they cannot see. Because these parts of ourselves are hidden in the shadow, and we need to be able to shine the light on this.
Okay, Quentin. I'm so freaking happy that we're talking to you. Like, I'm so grateful that we're having this conversation. That's kind of the beauty of podcasting sometimes, is obviously it's a massive benefit that people get to hear these conversations and they're going to get to hear you and all this wisdom and everything like that. But we also just get to reap the benefits of sitting in this space with you right now. You mentioned the dynamic earlier of, I'm going to do my best to, because it sparked so much in my head from my own experience. And so it started to do the Tetris thing that you just described. Yeah. But I want to go back and touch upon it a little bit because it was so profound for me. And I think there's something more there that I truthfully just want to understand to a greater depth. So you mentioned the dynamic of parents becoming, like mom's avoidant or vice versa, when it comes to attachment styles, and then the child being stuck in that space in the middle and their psyche breaking in a sense and splitting into two and demonstrating and displaying both of those behaviors that would then maybe potentially go on to be diagnosed as bipolar in some fashion, or even just viewed as bipolar. So in my 20s, I went through therapy for a brief time, and I had very much and it was prior to when social media, I think, was even around. Maybe like there probably was some form of social media, but people were definitely not diagnosing themselves on TikTok.
That's like the MySpace
when I was in my 20s, right? And I remember just feeling like I was bipolar and feeling like there were so many different aspects of how I was moving through my life and my experience in that fashion. And finally getting into a therapist's office and finally being able to sit down and work with somebody, he was very kind and helped me navigate a lot of the process. And it was like, yeah, you're not really this, you're not really that. So it could never necessarily be labeled, but it was something that I eventually just kind of made peace with and moved on from. And it didn't have a massive effect over long-term effects of my life. But I think it's exactly what you described, because my parents got divorced when I was 14. And this is where I want to unpack it a little bit more, not necessarily through the lens of like attachment and the avoidant and dismissive and disorganized and anxious and all of those different things. But the part for me that was really confusing was, because I think there's a layer and a component here too in relationships where we're playing out the masculine and feminine, where we have stories around those, we have programs around what masculine and feminine is and how those show up in our lives and in our relationships, and how we each have those individual energies within us, and trying to make peace with all of those things as well, right? And I can look back now and I can see how, yes, my dad was avoidant in some capacity, but he was also very anxious and very kind of like needy in a sense. And my mom was very, very avoidant at times and very, very much kind of pushing and distancing. And I think that there's a part of my psyche that could not comprehend, and like it was like my dad displaying almost like feminine qualities that I couldn't quite understand, and then my mom embodying masculine traits that I would, in some ways subconsciously portray in that lens, and then just getting all sorts of fucking confused and mixed up and crisscrossed, creating this incredible split inside of me that I've been trying to figure out and put back together to really grasp and understand through this lens of relationships, but attachment and love. And in some ways what that, and like, what's a healthy expression of masculinity? What's a healthy expression of feminine within the scope of relationships. And I know it's going to be so varied for everybody because everybody's got their own stories and their own experiences and everything like that. But I just want to hear your take and your spin on some of those concepts.
Yeah, for sure. So around attachment style, and I know we're not going to go there too much, but it's interesting because for me, attachment style are just the tip of the iceberg. So when we look at attachment style, right, I will often say the anxious person is avoiding to look at themselves, and the avoidant person is anxious to be seen for what they believe is wrong about them. So when we look at that, like, oftentimes we have
Hold on. Say that again.
Back that up.
That's one of those ones where I really want to slow that down because that's a crisscross where we're reflecting and blending and pushing and mirroring, but it was so fucking spot on. I just want to hear it again.
Yeah. So anxious people are oftentimes avoidant to themselves because they are trying to get from outside what they are not giving to themselves internally. So they are avoidant to their own needs. While the avoidant person is oftentimes anxious to be seen for what they believe is wrong about them, what they believe they're going to disappoint others with, or what they believe they are a failure about. So when we look at that, right, it's...
Yeah, let's just go back like 10, 15 years ago and
Right?
tell our earlier versions. That would have fixed everything right there if we just had that information when we got married, because that's exactly how our relationship played out. We're classic avoidant and anxious attachment styles, right? And exactly the way that you just described it, I feel like is how our relationship has gone for not the entirety, luckily, like we've unpacked it and figured it out and kind of clusterfucked our way through it. But
oh, we're so disorganized. We're not classic anything. We are so disorganized. But I have never, ever heard it explained like that. That suddenly is like, well, that makes complete sense.
Right. It's the underlying behavior behind the attachment style. It's what's actually driving the attachment style and driving that avoidant and driving that anxious behavior. Because I can relate so much to that idea of being very avoidant, but truthfully, it's because I don't want to be seen, right? I'm ashamed and I'm hiding, and I don't really want Stephanie to ever really see me for who I truly am, or at least how I perceive myself to be, right? How I actually think I am, rather than, I mean, truthfully, who I really am. I would love for her to see at some point, and we're getting there in our relationship today.
So you made such a point to show me what you didn't like about yourself.
Yes.
The avoidant is like, see, look at all.
Okay, keep going, Quentin. Sorry.
That will be really interesting because we were talking about deprivation, right? So same thing I was mentioning. On some level, you were deprived of your most authentic expression as a child, Craig, and then like you subconsciously, or because there's resistance still there, you deprive your partner of seeing your most authentic self, because being seen was reasoned with something like being punished or being rejected or being cast out of the tribe kind of thing. And so I always look at this. When you have a certain attachment style externally, you have the opposite internally. So in the end, that's why I mentioned it's just the tip of the iceberg. And I think we all know that famous book Attachment by the name came out. Yeah. And so at some point in the book, they say like, so they do a beautiful analysis on the behavior level around attachment style and stuff. And then they say, okay, what's the solution? Avoid dating avoidance. I'm like, well, good luck with that, because if you're anxious, you are going to attract an avoidant. It's physics. Like, you cannot prevent that happening. So you can avoid, but if you avoid dating avoidant, you are actually avoiding the people that can come into your life to reveal the wounds that needs healing. So thank you for the advice. It's actually the opposite of what we need to do. That doesn't mean we should stay with someone who is constantly dismissing avoidant and cannot take responsibility, but we can help each other. So yeah, like someone with a main anxious attachment will have a deep fear of loss, and they will look at there to crave someone who can make them feel safe and alleviate the internal suffering, right? So someone with an avoidant attachment who has a deep fear of being seen will crave connection, one being deeply scared of it. That's the split as well. They want someone they can feel safe with and experience love, but deep down they have already registered an intimate connection with a possibility of being attacked, controlled, repressed, and that's why it's hard to open up. Because the ego say not only my authentic self or my need doesn't matter, it's like it's almost shameful to have needs because we were criticized of shame for having needs. But again, that can be present in an anxious attachment. That's why oftentimes when people tell me I have anxious attachment or an avoidant, I'm like, okay, we're going to look at all the subconscious construct inside. Because like you mentioned, everyone is different.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Element 6. E6 is a local company right here in Tennessee, and they happen to manufacture some of the best pickleball paddles you're going to find. If you're just getting into pickleball or if you're a professional, E6 has you covered. All of their paddles are engineered with advanced technology and some of the latest materials in the pickleball game. They offer free shipping and returns, and right now, listeners of the podcast can save 10% on anything at their website. Head to the link in our description and be sure to enter in the promo code Steph Craig. Get out there, get on the courts, and come play some pickleball with us. Element 6, premium pickleball paddles for your pickleball journey.
To come back to that split now, because that's very important, I guess, for people to understand. And I'm going to take the example of my own journey, because I feel that for that topic, this is how I'm going to be able to explain it the best. So for me, there was some sort of massive contrast between at least two extreme worlds that the child is exposed to, and that creates a split. So a split is fracture, which is the opposite of wholeness. The whole game of healing is to become whole and to try to dissolve this fracture inside. So it could be with a parent, like you mentioned, very anxious and the other parent avoidant, but oftentimes parents, they display both of these anxious avoidant. So we are not only split in two, we are split in multiple parts. So for me personally, the split started with the conflict between my parents, of course. But then it was the chaos created witnessing the conflict between my parents in contrast with the golden life based on money with my grandmother. She was earning a lot of money. So there were that split where it's almost like with my parents, it was very low, very conflictual, not a lot of peace, lots of sadness. My mother was depressed. My dad was anxious. So it was like hell here. And then on the contrast, my grandmother was the complete opposite with a lot of money, extreme or sometimes toxic positive. So that massive contrast between that golden life, which I call then a golden cage, and that very traumatized life, it's like you live in a constant fantasy because you think that is realistic while it's constant fantasy. And you're trying to move away from that, but that become also familiar. So on top of that, I didn't have a solid present masculine role model that will teach me moral values and being healthily challenged so my masculine side will grow. So I didn't have anyone that would be quite balanced. So it would be extreme lows with my parents versus extreme high with my grandmother. And so I would then create a life where on one hand, I didn't feel responsible for anything. That was like my grandmother constantly giving me stuff. But on the other hand, I had the impression that everything was because of me, because I had to take responsibility for my emotion, for my parents' emotion, and take the blame for my mother's tears, because when they would argue, my mother would leave, which is the abandonment wound. And then my father would look at me and say, this is your fault. So I was constantly in a dynamic where I would be like, oh, I don't have to do anything. Everything is given to me here. And here I was like, I need to take responsibility for everything. So I developed one of the big prisons, which is I'm the problem. So I'm the problem. If I have a massive disorganized attachment with a high level of codependency, I will attract very avoidant women at the start, which would represent my father, because I will become my mother in relationship, so sensitive, victim, anxious. Then because I was not healing that and I was reinforcing my wounding over time, as it will get worse, I will attract partners with worse and worse behavior. Because again, you will always attract people and situations to reveal where you are still limited. But you also attract someone as the reflection of the pressure or the grief that is stored within your body over time that you are not dealing with. That's why oftentimes people attract worse and worse partner until one is very abusive, so they have no choice but to start healing. And that's the gift, right? The gift of the abuser is to come to split us open, and we're like, I cannot continue like that. So I either disappear from the earth or I heal. And sadly enough, some people disappear from the earth because they don't have the support necessary. But so that's why I do this work, because I want massive people after an abusive relationship to be able to break free from that and realize it was the biggest gift they have ever attracted. But for people who are in this, seeing the gift in an abuser, it's very hard, very, very hard, because you need to go through a whole individuation process. So that would be my perfect mechanism to keep proving that I'm the problem, because I will keep attracting partners that will label me the entire problem. I was called a narcissist I don't know how many times, because people cannot delineate between NPD and narcissistic traits, and then codependent trait with narcissistic traits. I had massive codependent traits, and when we are highly codependent, they are narcissistic trait that can look like codependent trait and vice versa. So then I would attract a couple of relationships where I will be labeled the problem, and that will reinforce the program. Well, that's me. But so I will stay in a relationship where I will be labeled the problem, so I will keep trying to fix myself, but stay in an environment where I will keep breaking myself. So fix, break, fix, break, fix, break. And that's hell on earth. You can never truly experience healing if you stay in an environment that keep breaking you. So the one characteristic that I will see, and then I will realize I was doing the same, is the projection. So those partners that I would attract would project their own trait towards me. Again, making me the sole issue so they could remain the sole victim. Because again, when you make the person the sole issue, you don't have to look at yourself. And that would work well with I'm the constant problem. So the story was repeating itself because I was labeled the problem as a child by my father. And then I would attract partner that would display characteristic of my father that would label me the problem. So of course, I had a lot of other prisons. I think that I've discovered in myself more than 30 subconscious prisons. And to let you know, on average, when I work with people, they have between 5 and 6. So I was constantly in the present, back into my past, in the present, back into my past. But because of the fear of loss, of the fear of being abandoned, I wouldn't be able to leave the toxic relationship. So I would keep focusing on fixing and keep breaking, fixing, breaking. So I was attracting avoidant partner wearing the mask of either the good girl or the mask of the false empath to reveal how I had become very avoidant to my authentic self. My first marriage ended up with a massive betrayal from her. And so the betrayal was so intense that it broke me. But then I realized, hold on, I was actually staying in a relationship where I was betraying myself. So I had to attract someone who would betray me to reveal the self-betrayal I was doing by staying in a relationship where I was not happy, not in love, and I was staying because of her child. I didn't want her child to feel abandoned again. I was calling that child my stepdaughter back then. But one day I realized, hold on, yeah, I'm like, people were telling, oh, you're so loyal to that child that is not even yours. But then I realized, yeah, I'm loyal to that child, but I was disloyal to what I truly wanted and need. Because I was staying in a relationship where I would be abused and it would be very toxic, only for the child, but then I was abandoning my own inner child. So I was actually disloyal to myself by being loyal to something else or someone else. And so this is what I realized over time. It's like, okay, I had no choice but to attract a partner that would do the most excruciating betrayal, because it was revealing the amount of self-betrayal I was doing in that relationship. I was able to move through that. 3 months ago, I went into a rebound relationship with a mirror of my ex-partner, but I was so grieving that I couldn't let go of that relationship. So I experienced the exact same thing. The partner who looked like exactly the same. They had one child, so many mirrors. And even with knowing what I know, I couldn't see it because I was too trapped. When I finally break from that second relationship and I went into, again, 6 months of deep analysis of the rest of the prison I couldn't see, then after 6 months, I was able to attract a secure partner for the first time, which I'm still in today. But that was to go through 2 years of massive hell. But even if with the partner I am with today, the first 6 months were really hard because my mistrust wounds was very high. And so it's this kind of relationship where I had to triple down the work on myself, this time to not fix myself, but to be able to dissolve the remaining of my false selves or my conditioned selves. And the shift really started when I was like, I need to stop trying to fix the relationship. I need to look at myself and take responsibility. And the moment I did that, it started to shift. I started to be able to be even more masculine. And the byproduct of that was my partner being able to open up more, reduce a level of what was the rest of her avoidant because she's mainly secure. And so now we are in a very good space when we are able to work together. But it took everything out of me to get to that point.
Thank you, Quentin, for sharing all of that. And especially, sharing your story, sharing what you've gone through. I think it helps a lot to frame it just in reality, right? To give these, because like I said, this stuff is such, like, it makes me scratch my brain. It's so hard to put all these pieces together sometimes. It's such a convoluted space. So
Absolutely.
I really appreciate you breaking it down. It's like Steph said earlier, you have a real way of putting it into words in context that really makes sense and help connections all the time.
Yes. Love that you bring it back to the thing that took us a while to get to. And it took me, I feel like, even longer to get to, but I finally got there, which was to stop focusing on fixing the relationship and start really looking inward. And that felt like, for the longest time, that felt like abandoning the relationship. It felt like I would be betraying, or I was being betrayed if that was happening. Like that went against everything I was ever taught or shown. And I resisted that to no end until finally it was almost like you said, you're ready to look at your shit or stop project. I don't remember how you worded it exactly, but like I had no other choice but to start looking in and to really go within and really start working on that. And that's a journey that's a gift that's going to keep on giving. There's so much to uncover. And so much of that even came through today. Thank you.
And just to add one thing with what you were saying, it's interesting because I realize our ego has become more evolved and intelligent because we have, as human beings, become more evolved and intelligent in this human era, because I still believe that there were people before human on this earth, but that's a complete other topic. But as our level of intelligence here, when we look at that, the ego becomes so insidious that for me personally, and I've seen a lot of people, because this is the era of healing, right? But the ego is so smart that it will push people to stay in a relationship that is abusive because they are taking the excuse of, no, I can heal in the relationship. And so we have to be, that was me. I was staying in a relationship where the people didn't want to work on themselves, but I was constantly trying to tell them, no, but the relationship is for healing. It's for healing. So my ego will use my own knowledge to try to sabotage me. And then my mentor brought that to my awareness, and I was like, oh, I'm actually using my ego is using the excuse to heal in a relationship so I can keep breaking myself again. So then the healing never takes place, because the real healing was like, move away, refocus back on you. And this is where we can start really the process of individuation, which I believe it's the whole process of healing is to become individuated. So it's how we become an independent, separate entity. We are still connected to the whole, but we become individuated to the part of us that have become like our parents. So for that to happen, we go through a process of removal internally, and we dissolve the part of us that has become our hurtful parents, and we become undivided internally. So parts that were once wounded are being reintegrated. And this is all happening when we clear the distortion of our history. And so I will finish, like, not that I finish, but I love this sentence that I heard. You know, they say the biggest journey is from the head to the heart. So that's a big journey in itself. But one day I heard my mentor saying that, and it was like so spot on, is the biggest journey is from the head to the heart. One is the starting point, the other is the finish point. But what is between the head and the heart is the throat. And what does the throat allow? Expression. So the journey is one of authentic expression. And therefore, in order to achieve that, is to remove any lies that we keep telling ourselves and we keep telling the world. So the gate to your most authentic life is through authentic expression. It's the throat, between the head and the heart.
Quentin, you're going to have to come back.
Please.
I hope you're down for that, because this has been incredible and amazing. And I'm so grateful that we got the opportunity to meet and chat and everything like that. And I've got a ton of other questions. Like, I'm excited to go back and listen to all of this again, because there's so many pieces and parts of it that really stood out that I really want to grasp more of. But is there anything else that you would like to share before we wrap up? I mean, what you just shared alone was like incredible and beautiful and amazing, but I just want to give you an opportunity before we wrap up.
No, I think I've shared a lot. Yeah, with all the topic, that was, I think the last sentence was maybe pretty good to wrap up with things, because yeah, sometimes I don't even remember what we talked about, but I can remember all the big theme. But yeah, like that's it for me.
Thank you so much, babe. Is there anything you want to?
We're gonna put, like, everywhere we can find you. We're gonna put the links in the show notes. Do you want to, like, call out where people can find you? It's also going to be in the show notes, but do you want to say it as well?
Yeah, for sure. So most of my work is on my Instagram. So it's at quentin.g.decamp. What am I doing at the moment? So I'm doing one-on-one and two-on-one coaching for people. I'm in the process of, there is a lot going on. So I have a small book that I sell for really as an introduction to my work. So it's more like one page, one concept. But other than that, at the moment, I'm finishing writing 3 PDF, 2 workshops, and 3 mini courses, because I really want to get that work out there. So the PDF would be around the wounded ego, should I stay or should I go from a relationship, and how to stop attracting an available partner and finding the person you want. Workshop would be around people pleasing and all the relationship fundamentals, because there's a lot of things out there, and for me, there's not enough of what I believe is really needed for people to know. And then the mini courses would probably be around dissolving fear and anxiety in relationship and communication. So that's everything. Otherwise, I have my website for people who want to work with me. It's www.quentindecamp.com. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you again, man. Yeah, we really, really appreciate it. It's been awesome.
Yes.
And
thank you very much.
I know.
Until next time, because we need to have you back.
Yeah, we definitely want you to come back on the podcast. But in the meantime, expect the best.
Plan for the greatest.
And we'll see everybody next time.
We got a wild ride. Wait and see, you and me. We were meant to be.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. You've made it all the way to the end, and we are so grateful for you. If you have a moment, you could take time to like, subscribe, and share this episode. It really helps us. And also, if you liked this episode, which you're still here, so you probably did, you might like these clips too. And again, thanks for supporting the Steph and Craig Show. There's new episodes every week. See you next time.